Abandon.
Abandon.
You want to go first?
No, but this is yours.
Gosh. To leave, to just completely forget and move on. Just vanish, you're gone.
Yeah, so I think that with abandon, it's when you leave something and it's sad. It's a sad thing. It's when you leave something and it's not under a good occasion.
To me, abandon means to leave something without the intention of ever coming back to get it. It doesn't have. To me, abandon isn't emotional or personal. It just means that if you've left it behind, you're never coming back for it. So if you went to school and you forgot your backpack, you wouldn't say you abandoned your backpack. You'd say you left it.
So it is emotional.
Well, but it's not. It just means you're never coming back to get it. Like, I've abandoned a car because I didn't want that car and I just left it there and I'm just never going to come back and get it. That car was abandoned, but it wasn't personal. You know, I just didn't have a use for it anymore. So
I feel like abandon is more of a personal.
That's good. No, that's good. That's legitimate.
Yeah.
I do feel like there is a sad connotation to it under some circumstances. Like if you abandon a puppy or if you abandon a person, then that might be sad for the person who's left behind.
So
it's funny.
Is it negative?
Yes, absolutely. Definitely has a negative connotation to it.
But if you abandon an object, maybe it's not, like Eric said, maybe it's not necessarily negative. Maybe it's something that needed to happen, but you don't intend on ever coming back. It's something that you have left behind for good.
It's funny that Eric mentioned abandoning a car. I would say I left my car on the side of the road and I never came back. I would never say I abandoned my car. I don't have any sort of emotional attachment to my car. I, unlike Eric, have feelings, and I would not say I was abandoning my car, but I would say I left my car, or, you know, I didn't want my car anymore.
I feel like abandon implies some sort of negligence.
Yeah.
Because if you abandon something that you have a responsibility for, then it means you left it and you are leaving your responsibility as well as the item. So if
That was a good point.
If you leave a responsibility for a child or for a dog or for a car, it means you owned that and you're leaving it to be somebody else's problem and you're abandoning your responsibility and the item at the same time.
Okay, but you never say you abandon garbage or something, right? Or
No, you just leave your garbage because that wasn't really your responsibility. It's something that is meaningful to you. Okay. And then you leave it, and that was your responsibility, but now you're leaving it for someone else. So you can abandon something of value.
That's a good point.
Yeah, your car is valuable to you, so you abandoning it.
Yeah, it has to have value.
Right.
Oh, it has to have value.
In some respect, yeah, because like you said, you wouldn't say that you abandoned trash because we don't really care about trash. You know, if we're going to use the term abandon, it's more serious than we would say, oh, I just left the trash outside to be picked up. If you're going to abandon something, then you had some kind of attachment to it, and you're just removing that attachment completely and leaving it behind forever.
Right, and if it's an inanimate object, if it's something that doesn't have life or personality, then it doesn't care. But if it's something that has personality, then it cares, and it can have a negative meaning.
And this is where the feelings aspect of the word abandon comes in, because you have a feeling towards something, you cared about something, a responsibility to something that you're just leaving now. Okay. And so it can hurt you as well as the other person, or if it's an object, I mean, that's something that you had a attachment to. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Tell her you'll protect her.
It's not my job to hold anybody's hand.
You don't have to. Just don't abandon her like you abandoned Lucy.
I didn't abandon anybody.
You keep telling yourself that. But the next time you ask someone in this unit to watch your back, you might remember how you watched hers.
I feel like I probably say abandon more than most. I'm pretty emotional. And anytime that there's somebody in my life who I feel was important and they're not there, in our culture now, it's easy to just leave people, to just to not say anything. No, it really is.
I know. I still think this is
And
helping
it-
someone to understand the word abandon.
Okay, abandon is a deep word, and they need to understand the depth.
Shmogi gave this to her.
Okay? You know, if your boyfriend is no good, you would abandon him. You know, if he was rude or mistreating you, then it would be a good idea to leave him. And you would feel as though you abandoned him, even though it wasn't a healthy relationship. To give up on somebody is still to lose something, you know, that still hurts. And the person who was left is going to feel abandoned because maybe they really relied on that other person for whatever kind of stability that they needed.
Okay. So, what about you?
I don't use this word very often, but it's a really important word. I feel like the context that I hear it the most often is with regards to child abandonment, which can mean not necessarily that you physically leave a child behind, but that you emotionally abandon a child, where you, or there's a child who's important to you, and you don't connect with them, or you're not emotionally there for them. And that's the context that I most often hear this word in my life, but I'm a parent. And so, but I don't use this word very often, but it is an important word.
We got a puppy at my house, my family, and we had it for like maybe 3 days, and my brother was over it. You know, it was too much to deal with, so he took the puppy back to the pound. And I was like, you abandoned that puppy. You know, you brought that puppy home and then you took it back and you abandoned it.
Well,
But we didn't, I mean, we didn't really abandon it because we didn't just like leave it somewhere. We just took it back to the pound because the puppy was too much to deal with.
But it was emotional.
But yeah, it was emotional. You know, you felt like you had a responsibility to that dog, and then you just took that responsibility out and took the dog back. And so that, I would have used the term abandon. Because again, abandon is more serious than like, oh, I just left something behind.
Oh, Mr. I abandoned my car.
I'm 100% sure he just said, yeah, it's emotional, and that's on tape, so.
In some contexts, but it doesn't have to be.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
No, you're right.
It's
You're
It's
right.
not purely emotional.
It doesn't
No.
have to be.
But I feel like there's that connotation a little bit.
Yeah, it's just got to be more
because-
serious. Like
Yeah, there's more
some kind of
responsibility tied
attachment.
in. Like you
Yeah.
had a responsibility and you neglected your responsibility.
Have you ever heard like abandon yourself into drugs or something? Like,
Abandoned yourself
Yeah,
into drugs? I've never heard that.
okay,
but
well,
I can understand that.
I
No, I would
feel
say
like-
that's an inaccurate use of the word abandon.
there's an example here, say they abandon themselves. Is there? So have you heard about this before?
No, I wouldn't use the word that way. That makes me think of a phrase that is much more common, which is reckless abandon.
That's what I was gonna ask. Have you ever heard of
yeah.
reckless abandon?
Yeah, reckless
Yeah.
abandon.
Reckless abandon is a noun. Like I was saying, if you go after something with reckless abandon, that means that you're going towards something without any consideration for anything else. Reckless, RECKLESS.
Okay.
Yeah,
Reckless.
reckless abandon. It means very carefree. Like you're not concerned about the cares or the responsibilities of others at all. So you're behaving with reckless abandon. But, you know, more common than the phrasing they've used, but still sort of an uncommon term.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so that's the difference between abandon, to abandon as a verb versus abandon as a noun. If you behave with abandon as a noun, then you are behaving without regard for other people.
And have you used abandon, like give up completely on projects or tasks?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So that's not emotional, or?
No, it doesn't. Like I said, I don't think it has to be emotional. We tie emotion to this word because it has a serious connotation to it. It's a high level word. But yes, if you were involved in a project and you didn't complete it, and you had no intention of starting that project again, then you abandoned it.
But I
Now-
think the project
Well-
is a serious thing. It's a commitment, right?
Yeah,
Well,
Yeah, you could abandon a project, you could abandon your group, you could abandon a job.
So conversely though, I would say that if you invest yourself in a project with abandon, that means that you are committing yourself completely to something to the exclusion of other things, and it does not have a negative connotation. If you devote yourself to something with abandon, you can devote yourself to a relationship with abandon, to another person with abandon, you can devote yourself to a project with abandon, and that doesn't mean something bad, that means something good. That means you're devoting your whole self to something without worrying about anything else.
That seems so opposite.
It is.
What you think.
No, but like that's the difference between the noun and the verb.
English.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so you mentioned it's high level word. What do you mean high level?
Like it's more serious. You know, you wouldn't use the term abandon for something that wasn't serious.
What's this low level?
Like, I wouldn't abandon my pencil. Like,
Leave
I
it.
lost my
You
pencil.
would
I
leave
left
it.
my pencil or my book
You would-
in
So-
the
You left
library.
something.
Yes.
You left something. If you leave something, no big deal. If you abandon something,
It means you're never coming back.
yeah, that means that there was intention. There was an intention. You were going to abandon this pencil. You're never coming back. There's some sort of significant meaning there.
Okay. And what about the phrase like turn my back on something? Is that the same
To
thing?
turn my back on something.
Is that the same to
Yeah.
abandon?
It is. They're very similar. Yes. If you're gonna turn your back on something, you've made the commitment. It's a responsibility, and you're deciding to no longer honor that commitment. You're turning your back. You're abandoning it. It's the same. It's pretty much the
Basically
same.
the same.
Similar.
Similar. Yeah.
Similar.
Which one is more frequently used?
Well, they're used for two different things. You know, like if you were to abandon a puppy, you probably wouldn't phrase it to say, I turned my back on that puppy. When you say you turned your back on someone, it's more like an interaction between two people. Like if I was friends with Leah and she made me mad and I decided not to be friends with her anymore, then I would say, well, I turned my back on Leah. I'm not gonna no longer. We say that because I'm no longer gonna interact face to face. I've turned away from that
Like
person.
imagine someone physically turning their back,
Right.
except it's emotional.
So they share similar properties, but you would use them to describe different things.
Now, if I went with Eric to the ballpark and then he left me there,
And never picked you back up.
and then maybe he would be
Yeah.
abandoning me. And now I have to ask him, did you forget about me or did you abandon me?
Yeah.
Was this on purpose or was this on accident?
That's a great example. Yeah, that's good.
Perfect.
Okay, very cool. Okay, and have you ever heard the phrase cast aside?
Cast aside.
Cast aside.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like that. I feel like cast aside is less on purpose than turn your back on someone is. I feel like you can cast someone aside more passively. Like maybe you can stop being interested in interacting with someone and you can cast them aside to go do other things, but it's not as deliberate as turning your back on someone is.
Okay, so it's
I would agree with that.
last level, like not that high level.
Yeah, less severe.
Of all three of the things, abandon,
we
turn
can
your
rank
back, the castaway is probably the least amount of attachment.
So if you,
Leaving is sort of accidental.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah, I
all
forgot.
of these
I don't
other
mean to.
words are
intentional.
intentional.
Yeah.
To cast something away, you're intentionally getting rid of it, but it's not like turning your back where you're saying, this is bad, I don't want this anymore. It's more of, this isn't what I want, I don't need it, so I'm going to set it aside.
Okay. I
Face.
guess, yeah. I guess that's it for this word.
Abandon. Abandon.